My name is Gwen, and I have a perfect memory. It's flawless because I remember everything that happened to me from the time that I was only 6 months old. For real? I remember when my mom was giving me supplementary food, and when my teeth were growing. It's easy for me to learn something from school, or to quote the book I read recently. I don't need to concentrate at all. Well, almost. I graduated from my school at the age of 13 with the highest grades in the whole state. At the age of 15, I finished my university education. Now I'm 18, and I'm at the end of my science internship in the center where I'm going to work. Every minute of my life is planned ahead. It's not because I need that. I love to live like that. It's easier for me to know what's going next and what was happening recently. The most interesting part is that my routine works perfectly well. There were no failures for many years, though my mother and friends are amazed when I'm saying something like, I'm finishing at 3.13 or 5:32 p.m. It seems that I have a brilliant future, the possibility to have a maximum of my life, my favorite work, and a lot of money ahead. And I know it will be exactly like that. But here comes the but. I've never had any friends. I don't need them much, but sometimes it's so important to have someone close. It's just, my peers don't understand my values. They don't even know half of the things that I know, and it's so boring for me to hang out with them. They're on the same level as monkeys on my scale of interests. I kind of need them, and they can develop into something decent, but kind of don't. Adults see only an immature upstart in me, and that's it. This view was quite popular among professors from my university. They were old, experienced, and gray hair and good graces. And there was me. I was just a little girl with a ponytail for them who was trying to destroy their stable and usual world. And children, they're just afraid of me. Even my sister is. She's sure that I'm a robot that pretends to be a human. I laugh, but still, I feel offended a little. Offenses are on the top level in the list of reasons why I don't have anyone close. They stand right after the boredom and misunderstanding, and they play a huge role. You know, I remember everything. Every good, bad, accidental, or deliberate things stay in my head forever. An ordinary human will forget about some insults in about a week or so. Then he would make peace and live his life further, and I can't. I remember my sister who has eaten a candy left for me. And also, I remember how my mother deceived me. She told me about where babies come from, and about our dog going to the farm. And I don't just remember. I experience the pain as if it's happened a moment ago. It doesn't fade away, and I can't erase it. Everything is in my head. But the most awful thing is that I involuntarily compare. I have a huge file catalog for every person that I know. And there are little scales which measure all the good and bad things that a person has ever done. For some reason, the list of bad things is always longer. That's how I'm quite lonely in my 18 years. I wanted to get fish or a cat, but I have an allergy. And also, I don't have time for them. I'm living with my parents at the moment. I recently celebrated my 18th birthday, and my apartment is being renovated. It feels that my parents, sister, and even neighbors are waiting for me to move as far as possible. They're scared of me. The reason is rather obvious. When I was little, my mom showed me to a different specialist, and one of those pseudo-doctors told her that I would probably become a sociopath with such a condition. Like I'd be one of those who attack people and so on. It's absolutely crazy. I didn't care, but my mother was impressed. From that time, she's waiting for me to start doing bad things and become evil. She ensures I have the right emotions and that I have emotions at all. She checks my stuff in case I have some things that could be dangerous for me or others. Once she's found scissors in my bag. And from that moment, we have locks on each door in our house. I'm not sick and I'm not a sociopath. Yeah, mostly I don't care about people, but I have emotions and stuff. I feel pain, joy, anger, and everything else that a person should feel. I wasn't kidnapped or substituted by some robot elf or an alien, but my mother doesn't care. As well as my sister, who locks her door before sleeping because she's so afraid of me. However, they're still with me, though they behave weirdly. And my father abandoned us. He wasn't able to cope with all these things. As far as I know, he has another family now. The ordinary one with an ordinary baby drooling all over and having no signs of genius. Despite all of that, if someone would ask me to choose between my perfect memory and things that ordinary people value, I'd still choose to be myself. It's better to be unusual and genius than to be another no one.
Hello everyone, I'm Carolyn and the mother of my own personal nightmare. Yes, I do mean Gwen. And also, yes, I am genuinely afraid of her. All I can do now is wait for the time when I am legally not responsible for her. Sure, some can say that I ought to be proud of such a brilliant and genius daughter. She's achieved a lot at such an early age, and she'll definitely go on to achieve even more, I have no doubt. And in that sense, yes, I am proud. She can have everything that she could ever want in this world. I only hope that she could want it far away from the rest of my family. Do you want to know what my scariest, deepest nightmare is? I'm sleeping in my bed. It's night. It's silent all around. And suddenly, the door swing opens. Gwen comes in. She looks just as she did when she was a child. She doesn't have anything in her hands, but she's wearing a filthy nightgown. Even in the darkness, I can see some dark traces, pieces of fur and leaves. Gwen comes over to my bed, leans over and says, "Mommy, you hurt me again. And now I'll hurt you too." She tries to reach my face with her hands covered in a dark substance. I don't know what happens next because I usually wake up at that moment and I run to check on whether the door is locked, the curtains are closed, and whether there are monsters in my wardrobe. I'm 45 and that child is making me think that monsters are real. Why do I always see this in my dreams? Why? Because I've already experienced it in my real life. A long time ago, when Gwen was only 6, she got a little dog named Lucky. From that moment on, we've never had any other pets besides all the begging that Gwen will do with her little sister Jade. They have an allergy, and I hate the dust and the fur, and the dogs destroy furniture, and either way, it's not a good fit. I would say anything so that that event wouldn't repeat itself. Yet, my daughter has an astounding memory. She's great at science and math, and she's a STEM student through and through, though I can't understand why she doesn't remember this, but it's good for her that she doesn't. And seeing that same image of your own child every night is enough to make anyone feel afraid, and I've made plenty of appointments with a therapist. Everything because despite all of her merits and her little quirks, Gwen is still my child living in my house. I want her to be happy. I want her to be normal, live a normal life. One thing is to be a mother of a genius child, and is another to be the mother of some psycho genius who managed to burn down the whole city. The idea of taking her to a doctor to get examined didn't really occur to me at the time. We already had our little Jade, who was an ordinary girl who was just a bit smarter than her peers. That's why I became paranoid about safety. Several years before all this, the incident with the dog happened, and my nightmares began to fade away. Gwen didn't like to get ready for school, so I would do it for her. And I once found scissors in her bag. They were ordinary scissors, which kids usually use at school, but it was a sign for me. The point wasn't necessarily about the scissors. I had gotten my fears because Gwen had never gathered her stuff herself. She would never even replace the broken pen with a new one, so why did she put scissors in her bag? I asked Gwen about it, and she said that she took it from class because her teacher scolds her when she asks someone for spare ones. But Gwen's never put anything in her bag herself. It was normal for me to be suspicious, right? That's when we started to go to the doctor. The thought about why she needed those scissors at school was terrified. My imagination was running rampant, and the doctors confirmed my suspicions. They even prescribed pills and medications and treatments, but my daughter refused to take them. I can't force her, so since then I've lived in fear. Sometimes I manage to put pills into Gwen's meal, and sometimes I don't. We have locks on every door, and my husband ended up leaving us because he couldn't manage to live in the conditions of an insane asylum, as he put it. Now I'm counting every minute till Gwen can move out to her own apartment or get a dorm at college. Maybe then I can stop being afraid of my own daughter.
Hi everyone, my name is Penelope, and I'm a doll for my parents. According to them, I don't have feelings, desires, and rights. I should be perfect, sweet, and successful. Everything for them to brag that they have such a wonderful daughter. All that I have is a bunch of rules and prohibitions that control my life. My schedule includes even a point about my bathroom attendance. All that's left for me is several hours before sleeping when nobody bothers me. It happens to be that my parents are quite rich and powerful. They worry a lot about the reputation of our family. Everything should be perfect. A successful father, a beautiful mother, and their daughter, which they are proud of. My mother sleeps with her makeup on. What if some paparazzi comes in through the window and takes a photo? Unfortunately, all of this is my parents' choice, which I didn't make. To begin with, I have a schedule hanging over my bed which I should follow. I get up at 6 a.m., then I have an hour for my morning routine, which includes the work of a makeup artist. Then goes my breakfast, a lot of homework, and homework once again. In the evening, I should discuss my educational progress with my parents. Also, I have sudden quizzes, in case there are no guests. In the middle of a conversation, my father can suddenly say something like, "Name the years of the French Revolution," and I should answer as fast as possible. The questions can be of any kind, about politics, economics, architecture, or the social life of other people. It depends on my father's imagination and his mood. I can go upstairs and have an hour for myself if I give the right answer, and I get a punishment if I make a mistake. The punishment may differ, from simple ones, like a week without my phone, to the difficult ones, like cleaning our stables with my own hands, or staying home instead of our planned trip. The most cruel one was when my parents refused to pay for my 16th birthday party. What I find most torturous is when my parents make their own parties. I always should behave nice, look flawless, smile all the time, and be silent unless someone asks me a question. I should answer the question, sustain the conversation, listen, nod, demonstrate my skills and awards, and be perfect. The same is when we attend someone's party. All my passions are strictly controlled by my parents. They think a perfect girl can't like knitting or flower growing. She should be fond of classical music and painting, not the modern one. And considering sports, she should adore gymnastics, equestrian sports, and little dog breeding. But I hate dogs. And of course, my every step is followed by specially trained staff. My governess, teachers, and my nanny. Please don't laugh at me. Yes, I forgot to mention that I'm 17 and I still have a nanny, monitoring my spare time. I've never been at real cool parties. I attended only those which my parents have chosen. I've never had any alcohol, dated a boy, or chosen my style. All in all, I've never done anything that usual girls of my age do. All my relationships weren't real, though they were quite sad. I have 2 friends approved by my parents, to be more precise. They are daughters of my father's business partners. You can imagine the warmness of our communication. Also, I have a boyfriend who will become my husband one day. We don't even like each other, but he also doesn't have a choice. We made a deal that unless someone sees us, we live our lives just like we want. He's fine, and I even wait for us to marry because then I'd have some freedom. I dream of becoming free because I can't live in this golden cage anymore. I'm 17, but I feel like I'm already a 40-year-old woman who hates everything around her. It hurts that many students from my school live another life, and no one punishes them for this. For example, my classmates were hanging out on the boat for the whole month. Only security cameras and police reports know what was going on there. And all that time, I was practicing to perform Bach on my cello. Their parents only laughed a bit when all the students were found and returned home. Why can't I live like this? I hate my parents. I hate the rules, and I also hate that I can't do anything about it. I can't leave because my parents have money and they know people. My parents will immediately find me, and also, well, where am I going to hide? And how should I live without money? That's why I'm sitting here and waiting to get married, because at least then I would be able to live my life.
Hi, y'all. My name is Judy, and I'm Penelope's mother. But I'm just wigging out because of everything my daughter just told you. When did the normal household rules become something like a cage? I grew up on these same rules, and I turned out fine. We're an ordinary, standard family. Of course, we have rules, but they're made with a purpose of bettering my offspring to be young, wonderful, productive humans. What, dear people, tell me, what is so awful about a good education? And when did being an educated person become a reason to hate your parents? I have spent so much of my own resources in making sure that they had everything that they could ever need to have a successful life. I think this is why she, who's just a child and soon will be an adult, should be thankful. Education doesn't prevent you from achieving different things. The absence of it does. And I know what I'm talking about because I often volunteer for orphanages. It's not such a big deal, but my heart's in the right place. We grant talented children who want to study and get out of an awful place where they've been born. These children often cry their eyes out because they're so happy to better themselves, to get some of that knowledge, And my daughter thinks that her father and I are tyrants for the same reason. And another thing, all I wanted to do was know who she was hanging out with, who her friends are, what kind of influences are having on her. When did that become the tyrannical nightmare? Any mother would want to know everything. I would do anything to save my poor little girl from any bad people. This is a totally normal response. I remember when I was a kid, it was very typical. I lived in a city apartment with my family. It was a little small, and I went to an urban school instead of, a boarding school. And I remember perfectly well that my mother forbade me from seeing certain types of boys. And now I know that they are dangerous people. Some of them joined up in a gang, and some went to jail right after graduating. Penelope has so many more options for communication these days. There are a lot of children in her school who are on the same social level as the rest of us. Of course, not all of them are the best company for my daughter, but still, she's got a wide selection of friends to choose from. But of course, as a kid, she wants something that she can't have. I guess it's normal for every teen to go through some rebellious phase and pick potential criminals instead of good guys. But I won't stand for it. I'd rather her prepare for her future than have to live with consequences for the rest of her life. I'm sorry, but no. Honestly, it feels like she's just being a hypocrite. Kids these days want to take their parents' money, but they don't want to behave and follow reasonable rules. And then their parents get to become the ultimate boss, the bad guy in their own protagonist story. I've always tried to protect Penelope. She's my only child, and I love her so much. My husband and I waited a long time to have her. And my husband, well, he was a bit of a trickster. He would often do things that could spoil his reputation. Frequently. I mean, just think about her prank at that cocktail party. We were going to sign an important contract. They were only the most influential guests for our business, and all my daughter had to do was be there and smile and look pretty. But she decided that was too much for her. She was rude to our guests, quarreled with an ambassador, and then, as a cherry on top, she found champagne somewhere, and, well, you can guess what happened after that. We didn't want a scandal, so we avoided any possible consequences quite successfully, but still, our family ended up making quite an awful impression. Even after her horrible, repulsive actions, my husband didn't want to punish Penelope too strictly and just forbade her from spending the weekend in the mountains as she was planning. And I, though I'm her mother, insisted on spanking or taking away all of her pocket money for a month, but personally, I think a good whip to the butt would be better. And now, all that I can think is that we were too mild. Maybe we should have been more strict, I'm against too much physical punishment, but I feel it's the only way to control Penelope. We've spoiled her too much. This time, there would be no forgiveness. I have already thought of how we can put Penelope in her place. She wants freedom. So she'll get it. The apartment where I spent my childhood is still under my name. No one has lived there for about 20 years, but it has 4 walls, running water, electricity, and furnishings. What more could she possibly want? And I've been paying rent all this time. And this is how I'm going to use it. I'll give Penelope my keys and send her to this apartment. There'll be no money, no help, only freedom. Just like she always wanted. I think I might have to find her a job, one that's suitable for a student and their schedule. Maybe a waitressing job at night would be just fine. It's not the worst area, but it's certainly not a gated community like we live in now. And I want her to have to experience working for someone else for minimum wage and think about her golden cage that she complains about. In any case, I think what we'll end up having to do, since she'll be farther away, is change the school for the one that I used to attend in my youth. Some might say that we're being too cruel and that it is in fact our fault that Penelope behaves like this. Yes, to an extent that's true, but she's still young. And I'm still her mother, so perhaps we have a chance to fix something before it gets too late. That's all I can hope for now. Hey, I have a question for you. Have you ever spent time in a morgue? Even if you did, it was likely only a one-off thing. At least, I hope it was for you anyway. Or maybe you snuck into an abandoned cemetery where there were no dead bodies above ground. Well, in my world, dead bodies, it's an everyday occurrence. Hi everyone, my name is Annie, and I live in a morgue. I spend most of my time, however, in the forensic examination department with my mother. She's a doctor, and it's pretty insane. We live in one that is funded by the government, so it's pretty large and has lots of different departments and rooms to hold bodies and freezers and a crematorium, the whole 9 yards. When I was a kid growing up, I'd like to wander the halls pretending I was a vampire from a scary movie. Yeah, I've been here for a while. I've done my homework here, had fun, played around, hung out in the autopsy room every now and again. All in all, it's been a great time. Before I realized what everyone else thought of death and bodies and that separation, that's kind of the moment when everything began. I guess what I mean by that is that everything kind of began when my Dad decided to swap his family for another one. My dad made a lot more money than my mom did, so he could have gotten away with everything had he employed the right lawyers. But while he did get the big and beautiful house, my mother got a fairly well-stocked bank account and a car which she had bought previously, and also me. Of course, I like to think I'm the greatest reward, but obviously not to him. So anyway, there wasn't much of a trial. My father gave us a week to move out and began to live happily in our house with his new family. And while I was packing my stuff, his new wife remodeled my room for their unborn child. And she did it all while I was still living there. Anyway, I try to forget about all that. I lived through it, and nothing really stood out more in my life at that point than that moment when I was kicked out from my own dad. And my mom and I were temporarily homeless. All of our stuff, except for our most treasured possessions, we had to send to our rented-out storage container until the moment we ended up getting a new house. And we decided to save on some money to move into the morgue where my mother was working. I have no idea how my mom managed to arrange it with her boss, but that's what happened. I think she told them the same thing she told me. Dear, it's only for several weeks until we find a new apartment. Yeah, several weeks came and then it went. Thankfully, my mother's office allowed us to live with relative comfort. There was a large sofa and our own bathroom and a shower. There was even a closet where Mom got a cot for me. There was a huge lounge just for the staff. There was a fridge, a microwave, a sink, pretty much anything that you would need. I mean, we didn't have a stove, but I had this small plug-in one that my mom and I would use to make food. Anyway, I had a place to do homework, chill, talk to people. And instead of a living room, we had an autopsy room with a pretty nice ceiling and beautiful gurneys. But at the time, I knew there were dead bodies, but I hadn't really experienced them before. I knew that death was inevitable. I mean, I lived in a morgue. And I also knew that the idea of death wasn't something necessarily to be afraid of, and that different cultures handle their dead differently and respect them in different ways, and that our view isn't necessarily the best view. It was fun to live in the morgue, and I remember I went live on Instagram and I bragged about how my life was. I behaved like this before I entered the autopsy room. For some reason, I thought that a morgue was some laboratory where doctors do weird stuff, like exploring samples of the human body and whatnot. My mom allowed me to watch all of what was going on, and it was gross, but it didn't really resemble humans. It looked like a steak that you would get at a grocery store, and that didn't scare me. But I kind of just realized all at once that doctors explore dead bodies, and it became an unpleasant surprise for me. Once I went out of my mother's office and accidentally mixed up the corridors because the lighting was dim and it was late and I really had to go to the bathroom. I walked in the direction of my mom's voice, and suddenly I bumped into someone's cold legs with their crooked nails and a name tag. I turned around and saw a lot of legs on the gurneys. I started to go back, panicking, and accidentally turned over one of the gurneys. I ended up dropping something that was lying there. Later, the psychiatrist told my mother that I was lucky to drop an average old man without any specific deformities. Everything could have ended up much worse had it been a more delicate cadaver. All in all, I panicked. I found a couple of gray hairs, and I started to stutter. I didn't go live for a while, and I didn't really talk to people online. I was afraid to leave my mother's office at night, and it began to develop even during the daytime, too. After school, I would sneak into the safety of my mom's office. She would take me to the psychiatrist when she had the time and the money. It would have been better to have appointments with a therapist, but we didn't have one near where we lived, so. Also, I suspected that when I got stutter, the students stopped talking to me at school. Well, they didn't exactly stop, but they started to bully me and call me names, calling me Miss Zombie and, it's stupid and childish, and I think that they were afraid, just like I was. They were ignorant. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Currently, still freaked out, but anyway, I had begged my mother to rent an apartment if we can't just buy one, but she refused. She says that why should we pay rent if we can live there for free and in such a cool place? If we moved, she'd have to get a new job and I'd have to go to a new school. And she liked the productivity of being able to wake up and go straight to work. I think the whole divorce thing with Dad was really hard on her. Desperate, I even asked my dad to let me live in his house for some time because I stopped sleeping at night. I would have dreams about the cadavers getting up and knocking at our door. But my dad's new wife didn't let me in. She said that I have my mother to solve my mental issues. Real comforting, right? For a long time, I felt awful and terrified, and all those conversations couldn't convince me that it was only my imagination, and that zombies exist only in Hollywood films. I couldn't sleep. The fear was so intense that I had panic attacks, and I was afraid to leave my little safe space or talk to people because of fear of what they'd think of me. My mother thinks that I have too good of imagination, and she's not going to change anything, but she is working with me on helping me get over my fears. And this is a constant mind shift about death and the finality of it, but also the beauty in the life cycle and knowing that there is an end, so you should live for the present.
Hey everyone, my name is Stephanie, and my daughter is a genuine fibber. Annie has always tended to make up things, and I'm trying to be a good mother and wean her off this stuff. The local psychiatrist, a good friend of mine, spoke to Annie after she scared herself to death. He told me that the reason for such a behavior is our divorce. Like she's blaming herself, and she sees creepy things everywhere because of that. Yeah, we don't have a lot of money at the moment. My salary is hardly enough for both of us. But my office is a comfy place to live. Otherwise, I would have never moved here with my child. We have everything we need for a full life. By the way, Annie shouldn't complain. Now she has someone to play with and to help her with homework. When we used to live with my ex-husband, we've never had time for her. And now she has several doctors, nurses, and interns for her entertainment. They're ready to do everything she wants. I'm fully aware that the morgue isn't the best place for a kid. That's why I forbade Annie to enter the autopsy room and look into the fridge. Still, it's another side of life. People can't live forever. As a doctor's daughter, Annie shouldn't be so impressionable and fear natural things like death. Am I right? And most importantly is that she doesn't need to get up 2 hours earlier to make it to school from the suburbs. And I don't need a hurry at all. I can start my work while having a cup of coffee and eating my breakfast. It's so convenient, don't you think? My efficiency increased, and my bosses award me every month for that. Unfortunately, Annie is not as happy as me. She seems to see ghosts, and she's afraid to be attacked by zombies or something like that. All in all, Annie has seen these teen horror movies in her head day and night. She drove herself mad and got gray hair and a stutter instead of trying to understand how hard her life is now. I'm a pathologist with more than 15 years of service, I'm tired of explaining that there are much scarier things in this world than dead people who are lying in our fridge. They're harmless and they've already died. Annie should fear living human beings who are still able to harm her. For example, her father. Quite often, I think that our psychiatrist has a point. Maybe Annie's fears are caused not by her imagination, or not only by that. Our divorce influenced her so much. Her father kicked her out of our house, betrayed her and hurt her, and now Annie replaces a real enemy with imaginary ones. Anyway, I'm not going to change anything. I'm okay with the place where we live now and my new life. In the nearest future, life won't change even if Annie insists, because I don't have money for that. Although I hope that my daughter would sooner or later learn how to fight with her fears, or she'd grow out of them, and everything will be fine.
Hey, so I have a confession. I am completely bald. I don't have a single strand of hair on my head, not even eyebrows or eyelashes. I never even have to shave my legs or any other part of my body anymore. But there is a lot of hair on me. It's thick and beautiful that you'd think many other women would be jealous. Hi, everyone. My name is Lexi. And like I said, I have beautiful, thick, luscious hair, but it only grows in one area. And as I said before, it's not my head. Everyone knows that a girl's chest is perhaps not the best place for her hair. Now, I wasn't born like this. Before I turned 15, everything was okay and normal with my body hair. I remember I used to want to go to the salon and get my hair thinned because it was just so thick. Although it is a beautiful raven black color. I got the hair color from my father. It was so black, and it was everywhere, even on my hands and on my back, and any time I had to shave or wax it off, I would just pray it would grow back less. But, as they say, be careful what you wish for. After I had turned 15, my body just decided that that was it. I'm not really sure what it was that happened to me. I didn't have any weird disease or anything like that. It was just my hormones refused to work as they should. Something must have connected in my genes that was long dormant. My mother began to worry about me and took me to the doctor. The doctor said that I was fine and that I would live and there's nothing to be worried about. But I had to get some kind of treatment, so the doctors prescribed me pills that should have fixed my hormones and asked me to do tests in half a year. In any case, everything should be fixed soon, and I can come have a test later. The pills were mostly for the breakouts that I was having. For some reason, I was a really late bloomer and didn't have my menstruation cycle until I turned 15, and it was causing a lot of hormone imbalances that were irregular. After some time, I began to notice a significant reduction in the growth of my hair, and the number of hair was lowering not only on my head, but all over my body. If a person has super thick hair, their bathroom drain clogs in like a week. That's pretty standard, I'd say, but my hair was falling out so quickly that my dad had to unclog the drain every 3 days. Also, any hair that I shaved off stopped growing back. I used to have to shave my arms every other day just because I didn't feel comfortable with the way my body looked. After the pills, though, I had to do it every other week, and the amount of hair changed drastically. It grew almost unnoticeably and not everywhere like it did before. I was so stupid to enjoy the changes at the time. What I didn't understand was that wasn't the end of it. My hair kept falling out. My long, thick eyelashes almost disappeared, as well as the hair on my head. My eyebrows were also gone, and that was the moment when my mother panicked once again and took me back to the hospital. There were tests, checkups, and so on. The outcome disappointed me because everything happened due to my pills. They fixed the prescription, and I've got my menstruation cycle again. But they irreparably damaged my body, and now my body won't grow hair anymore. My doctors did prescribe me new pills, which should have helped, and of course I responsibly took those as well. I enjoyed the effect of a free permanent epilation, but not on my whole body. And then something crazy began to happen. I don't know how exactly the medicine is acting because I'm not an expert, but the second type of pills also worked, and my hair began to grow back. That is, the hair on my chest. And the hair on my head fell out completely. Just like after chemotherapy. All the hair, including my lashes and eyebrows, fell out completely. Even my baby hairs around my head disappeared. That's how I became a bald little girl with a thick head of hair on my chest. It grows from one armpit to the other and from my neck to my last rib. The quality of my hair is gorgeous, I have to admit. I could even do a TV commercial for like Olay or L'Oreal. It's cool that cosmetology is on that level now and that my family has money for that. I am grateful for that. And all of the unwelcome hair that I have, I remove with the help of a trimmer. So, I mean, it's not the worst thing that could have happened, I guess. It's just, you always worry about what other people will think. I'm just a kid, My doctors told me that I'm not allowed to remove any of my hair any other way except for trimming because of the treatment. They don't want any kind of cuts or abrasions in case I get infected or something goes wrong. They say I can shorten it a little bit for it to not stick around. That's why I don't go to the pool or do any sports anymore. Before all this happened, I used to swim all the time and I even competed. It was really fun. But who would be glad to see that hairy sports girl with curls sticking out of her swimsuit? My parents are supporting me in any way that they can. My mother's trying to sue the doctor who prescribed me those pills in the first place. My treatment is quite expensive and she wants those people who made a horrible mistake to compensate at least for part of it. Unfortunately, all my relationships at school were over. I broke up with my boyfriend almost immediately. I didn't want him to see me looking like that. Of course, I do have a couple of people that still love me and that hang around me, my best friends. We make jokes about it, and we've convinced people that I've made everything up. I even offered someone to pull my fake hair or look under my shirt. Fortunately, no one's dared to do that, but everyone believes me. Still, it's hard. All I can do now is wait and hope that the doctors help me this time, and that they won't break something else instead. After all of this, my life can finally begin. I don't know, maybe it's a little sad that wearing a tank top is a life goal, but it's the little things that you miss sometimes.
Hello everyone, I'm Penny, and I'm the mother of poor Lexi. And as a mother, I should say that it's a real nightmare to see your child suffer and having no possibility to help. I felt guilty for everything that happened. Of course, it's the doctors to blame, but it's me who took Lexi to that hospital. Maybe if we waited a little, the issue would have fixed itself and my daughter wouldn't suffer. I'm trying to do everything for Lexi to make her life comfortable even in such circumstances. I showed her how to shave properly, the way of our new doctor advised. Also, I've bought an expensive trimmer for her not to hurt herself and feel comfortable. Every day we're choosing her outfit, wig, and makeup. We make everything to enhance her beauty and hide the absence of hair. I even signed up for special makeup lessons to learn how to draw eyebrows that look just like the real ones. We made fake lashes for Lexi and also bought about 20 different wigs for every occasion. She has a whole wardrobe of gorgeous clothes, though Lexi's clothes don't reveal any part of the body. And still, I feel that I'm not doing enough for my daughter. Alongside the treatment and creating Lexi's images, I'm attending courts every day. We're trying to sue those doctors who have done this to my girl. I want them to be punished for what they've done. Also, we need money. This new treatment is expensive and Lexi's insurance can't cover it completely, so it would be great to have additional money. The worst is that doctors even can't say anything about what they've done. They're trying to blame Lexi. How can she be responsible for that? She was following their recommendations. They refused to take responsibility. But I have the main proof. Lexi. Sometimes she follows me to court and demonstrates the results of their treatment. Justice seems to be on our side, but everything is still going on. Unfortunately, fundraising is not the best option for us. This way, people would know about Lexi's issue. I'm sure they would laugh and bully her. Several charity organizations have already contacted me about the first trials. They offered money for the treatment. I wanted to say yes because I saw no other choice. But my husband convinced me to reject the offers. He says our daughter wouldn't be able to live with such shame, and no money is worth such a sacrifice. He secretly got a loan using his position. Now we're using this money to pay for the treatment. Well, I don't know how he would put down the loan. I hope that we'll win the trial. And there's another side to the problem. Lexi is only 16, and she wants to be attractive. But my daughter only pretends that she's fine. She's actually not. Lexi has no friends, and she broke up with her boyfriend, though he was a good boy. I'm thinking about an appointment with a therapist for her. Of course, one can't fix this issue at once, and the treatment takes a lot of time. Maybe a therapist would help Lexi to accept herself the way that she looks now. All this stuff about body positivity and self-love, I think it can help. I also need a specialist because all the time I think about ways of helping my daughter. What else can I do to decrease her suffering? Am I thinking about this too much? Maybe the problem is not that significant.
Hi there, listeners. My name is Grace, and do you want to hear a secret? I have radioactive blood. I'm not sure how this all happened, but I hope at the very least I get to become a superhero through it. Anyway, all the doctors from our city and even from other cities are trying to save my life. I'm not trying to stop them because I feel really sick all the time, but I'm not really sure how they can help me. It's a weird mutation, I've been told, and no one knows what kind of abilities I might get after. You know what I'd really want? I'd want to be able to fly. Just imagine how cool it would be to be able to reach some place using your own wings or your own propeller. It would be really cool to walk through walls and be really agile. I kind of just want it all. I hope my dreams will come true. Everything began in a normal way, I guess. As peaceful as life could be if you were an orphan. My parents died, hence why I'm an orphan, and I ended up living in my relative's house. My aunt and her family lived there, and in the beginning, I was scared that they wouldn't accept me as part of their family, but I soon saw that they were happy to have me. My aunt is the best person in the world. She used to calm me down during long, hard nights, and she took care of me, trying to give me everything that I needed and things that I wanted. My uncle is also good, but he doesn't spend as much time home. He's busy working a lot. My relationship with my stepbrother are a little more complicated. He's older than me by 3 years, and sometimes he behaves just like he's an old man. Most of the time, he just ignores me, but I'm okay with that. We don't really have a lot in common anyway. So anyway, something weird began to happen to me, and my family immediately noticed. At first, they thought I was sick with, something normal. I began to feel dizzy and nauseous all the time. Also, it was hard for me to wake up in the morning. That's why I used to walk around the house like a zombie, and I was losing consciousness frighteningly often. My aunt gave me different kinds of medication, but nothing was helping. And then we had a conversation about boys and the birds and the bees because our school nurse suspected I was pregnant. I didn't think that was possible, but I agreed to visit a gynecologist. But, honestly, I confessed I haven't even kissed anyone before. Anyway, that was the moment when my endless hospital visits began. My aunt decided that it wasn't okay for a teen girl to feel like that, and something was seriously wrong. I hate being in a hospital. All those shots, tests, checkups, cold stethoscopes, ugh. Unfortunately, I began to feel even worse because other symptoms started to show up. My hair began to fall out, and my skin was peeling off, and rashes were appearing all over my body. I don't even really know how to describe the sensations properly. I never complained about my teeth. They were fine, but their state also started to bother me. My teeth were falling out, were becoming weaker, and they hurt. My gums swelled up and were bleeding. I couldn't even eat normally. The nausea also didn't help that particular issue very much. No one was able to understand what was going on at first, and then some test results came, and there were signs of radiation. It looked as if my blood had suddenly become radioactive and started to kill me from the inside. The doctors decided to do a blood transfusion, and since that very moment, my every waking morning has been starting from lying on the hospital couch and transfusion. At least I was lucky enough to have some money left over from my parents, and my aunt didn't have to spend her resources for my medical treatment. Well, at the very least, I can start pretending about what it would be like to be a superhero. It's one of the only things that honestly keeps me sane with all these tests and needles and tubes. My best friend Jessica says that maybe somebody's out to get me and that I should call the police, but she doesn't really understand anything. Anyway, I know it's all just fantasies, but, when you live like this every day, it's not bad to have hope in something, right?
My name is Jessica, and I'm the best and the only Grace's friend. And for half the year, I've been convincing her to talk to the police. The point is that my friend is being poisoned. I don't know how and with what medication exactly, but I'm sure. Because of Grace's money, of course. Her heritage money, which she got from her parents. Unfortunately, my dear friend refuses to see obvious things. Grace was about 12 when her parents died. She has a guardian, just like any other orphan juvenile. Grace was lucky enough because she had a close relative, her mom's sister, who agreed to take Grace under her guardianship. So my dear friend escaped orphanage life. We got acquainted after she moved to our neighborhood. I can't say anything about Grace's life in her aunt's family. She looked fine and didn't complain about anything. Grace studied well, having her own laptop and smartphone. But the thing is, I'm not sure how to explain properly what has happened. I also was 12, but I didn't notice a lot of things, even being at Grace's house, though I saw that no one really cared about Grace in that family. They were not very happy to have her in there. Well, everything looked decent and nice. Grace's aunt was smiling, her uncle asked about school news, and her older brother just ignored our existence just like any other senior would do. But I felt that they were not very interested in Grace's life indeed. I tried to talk about it, but Grace was sure that life's good. Well, it was as good as it could be for an orphan child. She always tried to be positive and see only the good in the world. Then we grew up and some new things appeared in Grace's relationships with her step-parents. After her 16th birthday, she received the possibility to take small sums of money from her parents' heritage, and it was rather large. They owned chain stores, which have been working pretty successfully since their death. Managers were not going to steal from the orphan, so she got not only a healthy bank account, but also profit participation. All those things were controlled by the lawyers, trustees, and a little bit by the orphanage service that monitored kids for them not to spend everything at once. All those things were controlled by the lawyers. One can easily understand that relatives and guardians had no power over the money. According to Grace's parents' last will, her guardians were supposed to have a small sum every month for Grace's needs. Once again, I'm not a lawyer and I don't know exactly all the details. Anyway, everything began from that. As soon as Grace started to receive her money, her guardians suddenly began to show their real intentions. Once their TV broke, and they didn't have enough money to fix it, then they decided to take a vacation, and they didn't have money for that again. One thing after another. Well, you understand. There were a lot of such situations, and every time Grace's aunt was saying something like, "Please, Grace, be so kind," and Grace has never refused to help them. But once one of the lawyers showed her money circulation and forbade her to take more than $200 for girls' stuff every month. Smart adults were afraid that Grace would bankrupt in such a way soon. As soon as the stream of money was over, the love of Grace's relatives also began to fade. I saw her uncle screaming that she's a mooch and she's bothering them, although they were not going to kick her out. And then this started to happen to Grace. At first, I thought it was because of the exams and nerves. Grace looked pale, even green. She was shaking and nauseous, and the school nurse asked her guardians to do a gynecological checkup. But I knew for sure she was not pregnant. Grace hasn't even kissed a guy before. Then everything went even worse, and the endless hospital visits began. With time, Grace started to look even more ill. And when her test results were ready, I couldn't believe my own eyes. Where could an ordinary girl from the suburbs get radiation? And the amount of it was so high that it started to kill her. Suddenly, I, and also Grace's lawyers, began to understand that my friend is being poisoned. I have no proof, and Grace is talking about some nonsense about superheroes. At least she agrees to have medical treatment. I'm scared that soon it will be useless. As far as I know, her guardians are already petitioning a court to deem her mentally incompetent. Like she's completely insane. And I'm sure that as soon as they get the document, Grace won't live long. Or she would live as a special kind of superhero. A deranged one. She'll end up somewhere in the cheapest asylum. It's because the guardians of the mad person are almost his or her inheritors. It means they will have unlimited access to Grace's money, and her life will be over at that moment. Now I'm trying to convince her to talk to the police until it's too late. I'm crying every night because I'm afraid not to see her again. I hope everything will be fine.
For several months now, I keep pretending that I'm sleeping and that I don't see him approaching me every night and sitting near my bed. I don't know what he's doing and I don't know why he's doing it. And you know what? I don't want to know. But I'm pretty sure of one thing, that there's not a single good thought about me running through his mind. And you know, the worst part of it all is that no one believes me. Hi, my name is Natalie, and my story is pretty crazy. The point is that my stepfather has something wicked on his mind, and it's about me. My mother says that I'm just making things up. Relatives, friends, the people who are closest to me claim that it's not possible because my stepfather's such a cool and swell guy. I'm safe now, but I'm so afraid to go back home. What if Steve is there waiting for me somewhere and... In fact, I couldn't believe it myself for a long time. I thought that everything I was seeing was in my dream or just my imagination, night terrors. I've known Stephen since my early childhood. I treated him as my own father. He raised me like his own daughter. It's not possible for a person like that, who calmed me down after I crashed my bike and skinned my knee, who read me fairy tales to help me sleep, to become a monster all of the sudden, right? Everything was once so wonderful. I used to call him Dad before I turned 17, and I meant it. He was my father, even if it wasn't biological. He was almost as important to me as my own mother. It was Stephen who would drive me to school, even though it was so far away from our house. He also signed me up for different classes and extracurricular activities when I was a kid. He helped me explore my interests. He even helped me choose an outfit for a school dance one time. My mother is always busy. She has her own business and rarely can stay home for very long. Even though my stepfather is the breadwinner in the family, he still supports her pursuing her dreams. And I always admired that about him. And even though he worked just as hard as anyone else, he always made time for me. And I think I now know why. Once, I woke up in the middle of the night because I was really thirsty. I suddenly saw something weird. Something had moved. Somebody was in my room. I was so scared that I screamed, but Stephen said he just wanted to say goodnight, and that's why he entered. It was strange, but, not unbelievable. Maybe I forgot to switch off the lights before falling asleep, and he thought I was still studying. It was an excuse, but I told myself to believe it at that time. After that night, I would wake up several times, and every time he was in my room. He kept saying things like, "Oh dear, may I use your laptop because mine is broken?" Or, "The internet is better in here. Can I work in your room a little bit? That's fine, right?" I agreed, but honestly, I was kind of sure I was dreaming. Honestly, why does a person need to use the internet in the middle of the night in their daughter's room? And what could be wrong with the laptop that was working perfectly fine several hours ago? I was so exhausted, and none of it was adding up, so I figured it had to have been a dream. And then I stopped sleeping well at all. I was scared. I would nap in my bed and keep waking up because someone was looking at me, staring at me, observing me. Can you even imagine what that feels like, to fall asleep being watched? And every time I would see my stepfather, I asked him, "Please don't bother me because I can't sleep well or study the next day," but he kept ignoring my requests. He didn't even deny his presence in my room. He didn't say I was making everything up. He said he needed this, but what did he need and why did he need it? I was afraid to ask, and I was even more afraid to hear the answer. It was at that moment I began to understand that all of his words about my beauty, that I resembled my mother in her young age, were not just normal compliments an adult gives to his kid. What if he was flirting with me? What if he had some dirty intentions even when I was a kid and was just buttering me up all this time to serve me on a platter? So, basically, I wasn't sleeping well because of my fears, and when I went to my mother, she said that she had no time for my delusional fantasy. She wouldn't believe me. But more than that, she scolded me saying I was ungrateful because I was blaming my stepfather, though he did so much for me. He raised me, helped me, took care of me. How dare I talk to him in such a way? Her words cut so deep. They meant that my mother wouldn't believe me and wouldn't help me. I tried to talk to my friends about the situation, but they also decided that I was clearly insane. One of them even assumed that I had some Freudian issues. I had read about them afterward. It's awful. All of the stuff he said is just nonsense. Anyway, she also suggested that I should find a boyfriend as soon as possible because I was clearly craving attention. I didn't receive any help from anyone, so I ran away. I thought that's all I could do. At school, I said that I wanted to spend my last year in the dorms because of my bad grades. I was afraid to fail an application for university, and it was pretty true, actually, because my grades really went down. The school administration met my wish, thankfully. For now, I'm living at the school dorm and kept saying that it's because of my grades. Also, I'm trying to go home as little as possible, and I never spend nights there. What if Steven decides it's his last chance to do something to me? I'm safe now, but I still can't recover from that terrible feeling. I want to forget everything, just like a bad dream. But anyway, I have to keep talking to this person whether I want to or not. At least I'm not afraid to sleep anymore.
My name is Steven, and I'm Natalie's stepfather. I don't know what exactly her mother and I did wrong, but Natalie's behavior became just insane. It happened that I can't have my own children, but I've always thought that a true family should have at least one kid. I wanted to adopt one, but my wife was against that. It is why I brought all my love and parental feelings to Natalie. It hurts that I sincerely take Natalie as my own child, and I've never wished anything bad her. Instead, her mother and I often quarrel because of Natalie. My wife says that I'm spoiling our child too much. I want only the best for Natalie. The best classes, best clothes, gadgets. I was trying to help her in any possible way and didn't have any strict restrictions. Everything was made for our child to grow smart, independent, and happy. And now I want to tell you why our family is almost ruined. Internet. For real. The point is that I started working remotely. My work is related to finances and some speculations, but it's not very interesting for you. The main thing is that I began to work from home. We're living in the upstate. The internet connections can be quite awful here. We have the connection, but the speed is low and it's not enough for me. That's why during the daytime, I'm switching one room for the other in order to find the place where the speed would be the best. As soon as I started to work from home, I asked the service workers to fix the issue. Unfortunately, the year passed and nothing really changed. My wife even suggested swapping some rooms, but such replacement would cost a lot of money, and it wouldn't help much. That's why I was trying to find another way. Often, I use the internet even at night hours, sometimes till 3 a.m. or even later. And the best connection is in Natalie's room. I don't know why it's like that. I wasn't pleased when I got to know that because I didn't want to wake Natalie up all the time. Then it happened. The awful gaps in Natalie's upbringing began to show. The things that she has made up shocked me so much that my hands are still shaking a bit. Why did she decide that I've planned something so dirty? I think that I've never given reasons for such thoughts. Maybe I really spoiled her too much. I tried to do everything for my daughter to be confident. I even read some books, and they taught me that girls should know she's beautiful, smart, and wonderful. That's why I gave her lots of compliments. By the way, I also worshipped my wife, because girls are girls no matter how old they are. So I don't know why Natalie thought what she thought. I just did my work in her room. The other question is, why didn't she notice the laptop in my hands? Now, after Natalie moved out, we did some alterations, and her room is my office at the moment. Her new room, all green, just as she likes, is downstairs. I hope Natalie would come back and this nightmare will be over. Please share your opinion on the story and its characters in the comments section. Like the video, show it to your friends, and subscribe not to miss the next ones.